Salutations everyone, this is Razor again, here to talk about Overwatch 2. We had the developer update that gave us a lot of intel, a lot of news, including the big thing that most of us saw coming based off of what we saw at BlizzConline. There was a lot of speculation that, hey, in all these clips, there's only one tank on every team. When are they going to address this? They finally have. We're getting 5v5 for Overwatch 2. Now, again, I feel like it cannot be stressed enough. Overwatch PvP is going to be available to everybody. If you have Overwatch 1 right now, the game that you saw just a couple days ago, that is what you're going to be playing for free. This is the PvP. It's a free update to Overwatch 1. What is Overwatch 2? It's a story mode that comes with Overwatch 1 for free. That's the best way to look at it. So, now that that's out of the way, it was like, oh, how are they going to challenge this? You know, why don't they just do this in Overwatch 1 right now? There's so much that needs to be done to make this work. When we first kind of knew that this was happening, I had a lot of skepticism. I was like, oh, there's going to be a lot that needs to be changed to make this work. And now that we do know that it's a thing and that they are making some changes, you know, let's say there's 83 big problems that this creates. They alleviated like 4 of them, right? So it's like we know that they're looking in the right direction. But also it was quite obvious from everything that we saw and everything that we didn't see that this game is super duper far off from coming out. It will not be coming out in the next 12 months. I can tell you that much right now. I don't know when it's coming out. I'm going to say late 2022 at the earliest, because there's still so much that has to be done for this game for both PvE and the PvP side of things. There were so many heroes that were absent because they're still working on it, and that makes perfect sense. You're taking a tank out of the equation, the most important role in the game from alpha to right now. Tanks have always been the most important. They used to be the most powerful for the longest time, and for the past year or so, DPS have been the most powerful, and I think that will continue to be the way forever. But tanks have always been the most important, and for the most time, they were the most powerful in the entire game. We can see this leading up to the 2-2-2 roll lock era, with the GOATS meta, obviously. So what does this do? Because this is what I'm going to be focusing mostly on in this video. We saw some, the new maps, and we saw some changes to some of the heroes and some, new designs. But it's this 5v5 solo tank gameplay. The entire identity of Overwatch is super changing. It's definitely very contrary to the identity that Overwatch has right now. 2 tanks, 2 supports, 2 DPS. It makes perfect sense. Now that you have to solo tank, which, by the way, if they were going to change anything outside of 2-2-2 6v6, this is the only one that makes sense. Out of all the experiments that they've done, out of all the things that people have proposed and they've done internal testings that they've noted, this is the only one that could possibly ever work. It could not work 1-3-2. That's just not going to work. It doesn't really matter what role that you're doing. You're having too many DPSs or not enough healers, right? So that's just the way it works. The only way to go away from 2-2-2 6v6 is to go 2-2-1 5v5. That is the only way that can necessarily work without completely overhauling the entire game, which they kind of sort of have to do anyway, changing things to 5v5. There's so many things that have to be changed, and they have already shown some of the things that need to be changed that they have changed, such as, obviously buffing the tanks. There's more that has to be done, but since you only have one tank, that one tank has to be stronger. That's just obvious from the get-go. And they are obviously focusing a lot on CC. They mentioned that they're looking a lot of CC and getting rid of a lot of the CC in the game. I don't know how you have Doomfist without the kit that he is right now. They were talking about maybe getting rid of Flashing from McCree. That one kind of makes sense. I don't know how you do Brig without taking away her CC, because like Flail is so integral to not insta-dying in a lot of matchups, and if you aren't able to bash, then if she doesn't have CC, she does not work up close. And if she doesn't work up close, she's useless because she already doesn't work from range. And then you have obviously the healer change, the passive to healers, where they all get passive healing, much like only Mercy only has right now, which they did address in this. Like, so I don't know if Mercy's is going to be stronger or have a less of a cooldown or what. They didn't get into that, but they did note that that was, so Mercy kind of loses this unique thing to her. So I don't know what they're going to end up doing with that, because obviously everything that we saw, I'm going to say 100% of that is not final. I don't think anything will come through that we have seen that will not go through changes by the time this game comes out, more than a year out from now. So the fact that every healer self-heals makes absolute sense now. You have to have that if you're only going to have one tank. If you only have one tank, then what happens is you're getting rid of at least one barrier in this game, and unless your solo tank is Roadhog, then you're getting rid of two barriers, right? Or Wrecking Ball, obviously. And I know Diva doesn't have a barrier, but at least she has Defense Matrix, so that's a tankable, denial of damage. Every tank outside of Hog and Wrecking Ball has that, although Wrecking Ball's adaptive shield kind of denies damage because it doesn't charge ult. But obviously tanks as a whole, we know you're not able to farm as much ult off of them, and the fact that you're losing one character, ults are also going to be charged a little bit less. So they did say that they have changed certain characters' ult rate in order to make it more balanced, right? However you want to view that picture. But the fact that you're taking away a tank changes so much of this game. So much that there are a lot of huge red flags come up. I personally am not a fan of this move. I understand that they had a couple of personalities on there that said, oh, I was skeptical at first, but I kind of like to see what this is good. They were very hesitant on saying that they liked this, and I give them full credence for not saying that they don't like it. They're on the spot, they're given this great opportunity, they're getting brand integration there with the Overwatch brand, and they have this opportunity, and you don't want to bash the devs right in front of them or say that their ideas are dumb or scary or anything like that. So I can completely give them a little bit of leeway there for not expressing all of their concerns, although some of their concerns were expressed when it comes to the personalities, the streamers, the pros that they had on there. When you take away a barrier, a lot of things change. Regardless of how much you buff that one tank, so many things change right out the get-go. Any character that is helped or hurt by barriers changes drastically, right? Torbjorn's turret gains a shit ton more value because now there's only one character that can possibly block that incoming damage. And that blocking of damage isn't going to last very long, whether you're face tanking with Roadhog or shield tanking with Reinhardt, or defense matrixing or bubbling or adaptive shielding, whatever. So that's going to get a ton more. Pharah, her rockets are going to have a lot more free range. She's going to be immediately stronger. Widowmaker is great when there's no shields. If there's no shields, then she can just hit shots on anybody. And the fact that there's only one tank means there's going to be a lot less ability to focus and dive, because you're only going to have one tank. Your Winston jumps in, there's no one there to bubble him. There's nowhere to defense matrix him. The pile drive coming down from Wrecking Ball, he's not going to get bubbled after that. There's no one's going to follow up with a hook. So much of that changes. Any kind of spam, Junkrat spam, Hanzo arrows, Torbjorn turret, Far Rocket, Bastion. How could they possibly make Bastion work in a 2-2-1 with only one tank? He's going to have to be completely reworked, because even just last season in the Overwatch League, there was a long time where Bastion was meta, and the best team, arguably 2 seasons ago, I should say, the best team at the time, they couldn't stop Bastion. And if the best Overwatch League team can't stop Bastion, no one's going to stop Bastion. Bastion has been unstoppable from bronze, silver, gold. You could argue plat and even diamond from the get-go, but not a lot of people play him, or they kind of like, soft ban him about, he's not fun, or like, all right, we really need to try now. We need to full hold. So now let's pull out the Bastion, right? We've all had those. How could they possibly make Bastion work anywhere near the state that he is right now when there's only one tank? That's going to be super duper difficult, right? And obviously they're going to be dealing with the CC. They addressed that a little bit with getting rid of May's freeze. Like that, you have to have that. You absolutely have to have that. If you have one tank and May can freeze people, she is the meta. It's just May mirror versus May mirror. I mean, we've seen a lot of that the past few years in Overwatch, where May has been super meta, and those May Reaper comps are super boring to watch, and they are not entertaining, and they're very, very slow, and they're not skill based. That is concerning. So what they did, they took care of the freeze. They had it slow more and do more damage to compensate that. So you can see that change going in the right direction, right? And then you have, if we're getting rid of CC, how do you stop Tracer, or Wrecking Ball? Like that's the only way you could ever kill Wrecking Ball in Overwatch right now. You have to CC him at least once, right? Genji is going to be unstoppable, right? With only one tank, what is going to stop him? Honestly, what's going to stop him? Especially if you're taking away CC, I don't see how Genji isn't immediately top tier in a 2-2-1, regardless of what kind of changes. As long as they completely don't 100% alter the character and what he does, he's going to be insane. So there's so many variables here. How are people going to adjust? Because so many people from alpha all the way to today are just so used to Death Paul, stay behind Ryan's shield, and then blame somebody when something doesn't go wrong. You were holding your shield for me, you weren't healing me. Flaming is going to go instantly through the roof for this, focusing on the tank player. Because there's only one tank to blame, and there's no synergy. Every single Overwatch meta ever has been dictated from what's the strongest tank combo. Is it double bubble? Is it dive Zarya, Diva, or sorry, Winston Diva? Is it Zarya Reinhardt? Is it Orisa Hog? Is it Orisa Sigma? Everything has always been dictated by the tanks because they're the most important characters. They create space, they control space, and you can pump more healing into them and keep them alive longer than any other characters, right? I don't care if your Reaper's self-healing and getting a ton of pocketing, Orion holding up his shield and getting double pocketed and a little bit of help from his DPS is going to last way much longer. Or hell, even a Bastion that's self-healing because of all that huge damage reduction. So this is going to be a humongous problem, because now that you can only have one tank, I think this complicates what I've deemed the Reinhardt problem, although I should probably call it the main tank problem. It's multiplied so much more now, because where it has been in Overwatch's history, man, either Reinhardt has to be the best tank in the game or like useless, right? And Orisa was that for like about a year as well. So like anytime, people don't main tank, as the least common thing. I think probably about 80% of the Overwatch player base plays DPS, and the other 20% is divvied up somewhere between healer and tank. I'm probably off a little bit about that, but that's how it feels, and that's how it seems like from the data that we do have. So yes, this will help queue times because you only have one person having to queue for the least popular position. But that position is going to be not necessarily more important, but you can throw a lot harder because you're the only tank, right? There's no way how they can just, I know we all saw footage of some developers playing. We have to throw all that out the window. A, none of it's final. B, these are devs. Devs are kind of notorious for being terrible at playing video games. Let me tell you. I don't care what studio they work for. But everything's new, everything's developing, and if you open up any sort of open alpha or beta to any multiplayer game that's ever been made, bugs been found minute 2. Like, that's just how it works, that devs never found or never thought of, or some sort of exploit, or finding a glitch in this and that. So I'm going to throw all that out the window for a very good reason. There's no way you can develop a game where Reinhardt and Roadhog are just as good as one another. One's going to be way better than the other, one way or another. right? And those are kind of like the big polar opposites. Because Ryan, his character, it's all about holding a shield, right? Yes, now he gets 2 fire strikes, and that's pretty cool. He can move with his pin a little bit more, and he can cancel his pin. That's great. That's the kind of changes that you need. Winston getting that charged lightning ranged attack. That's what he's going to need if he's the only tank. Otherwise, you're just going to get completely outpoked. He doesn't have a shield that can match Reinhardt's or even Zarya's bubbles or the face tanking ability of Roadhog, right? So they needed to do that to Winston, and that is a good sign that they're doing that. But you can kind of see where Zarya can work now that she has basically 3 bubbles. She has her own, a projected, and one that she can either, it sounds like, be a projected or a self one. The timings of that and the charge that you're going to gain from that is obviously going to go through a ton of changes. But no matter what, it seems like, obviously, I think every single character needs to be looked at drastically. Otherwise, Widows are going to own everything, or Torbjorns will be unstoppable, or you have to play Reinhardt. Like, they didn't even show Orisa because they're like, we really don't know what to do with her right now. And that's completely understandable because her as a solo tank is terrible. It's absolutely terrible. So changes need to be made, especially with this team. How are you ever going to play Diva, right? If you play Diva into Reinhardt, they beat you in damage mitigation. And if they play, let's say Hog is terrible, he's still going to beat her because he could just hook her, right? Same with Sigma. He's going to have a weaker shield than Rein, possibly even weaker shield than Winston. Maybe obviously he should be even weaker than Orisa's. Hog's going to absolutely wipe that. So maybe Hog is an absolute throw pick unless they play Diva. So in which case, you can never play Diva because what if they have the Rein? They outdo you in defense, and if they play Roadhog, they outdo you in offense, and they kind of completely destroy your character. So do they have defense matrix block hook? Do they have give Wrecking Ball some sort of like support? Do they give Roadhog some sort of support? We saw the experiments that they did with the solo tank builds, but there's a lot more that's going to need to be done. I think there's a ton of red flags. Obviously, yes, some of them have been addressed. The changes to Ryan, changes to Winston that we did see. The Zarya bubbles kind of make sense, but no matter, it seems like what's going to happen, there's going to be a de facto tank. And if you don't play that one tank, you're hard throwing. Right now, the only mitigating factor to that is your off tank. It's like, oh man, because Reinhardt's always been the guy that no one really has a problem with, right? You can't run dive in pubs; it doesn't work. You need communication, and you need synergy, and you don't get that in pubs. But Ryan Zarya, everyone complained that. Hell, Winston Zarya, people have been able to figure that out. Or Hog Orisa, all these synergies are very, very easy. They're very, very obvious. But how are you going to run solo tank Diva if it does? I don't care if you're running Ash McCree, Lucio Baptiste. There's so many things that are going to have to be done. They're thinking about, do we tone down the healing now that there's only one tank that you can just pump everything into? There's going to be a lot more emphasis on flank. DPS are absolutely going to rule in Overwatch 2. I know people are talking about, oh man, some tank players are going to lose their jobs. Maybe not. I mean, it depends on the how viable multiple tanks are. If only like 2 or 3 tanks are viable when this game comes out, and there's going to be a long beta for this thing like there was for Overwatch 1, there's going to be a ton of changes, I can assure you of that. Hell, we might even get a beta starting by the end of this year. Maybe it'll be like a 2-phase beta. Who knows? But a lot is going to have to change, because how are you going to play a single tank against a Bastion Junkrat? How are you going to be able to run a Diva against an Orisa who has a really, really good barrier and can outpoke you, and you don't have enough defense matrix to protect yourself, let alone your team? Healing is going to be a little bit easier because, less people to come at you, but at the same time, you have less protection. Peeling is gone from the game. You're not going to be able to peel for your healers, so yes, they need this self-healing now. DPS are going to run rampant. They're absolutely going to rule this game even more so than they do right now, which they absolutely do right now. And the tanks are going to be stronger. They have to be. But the balance of striking single tanks is going to be near impossible unless they 100% rework every single character. Because how do you balance a guy whose thing is, I block all the damage with my shield, to the guy whose, I shoot things with a shotgun and hook them? Like, there's no way to make those at the same level. I know you could say, oh, maybe they're good on this map, but not good on this map. Does that work right now, guys? Does that really work right now? Not really. Not really. Some characters, some situations, yes. You can run Bastion, Battleship on payloads, but they're not going to work as well on controls and stuff. So, like, you have that. Or, you know, Pharah's going to be good on this map because it's outside. Not so good on this map because it's so inside. But those kind of huge... It's not like Ryan is bad on any map right now. He's better on some maps, but he's good on every map. And, you know, what is Roadhog right now? What has he always kind of been? He's kind of just been a throw pick for DPS players that queue into tank just because they want to get, you know, competitive points, or they just want to get into a game because the queue is so long. So there's so much that needs to be addressed with this 5v5 solo tank thing. Because before, it was the off tanks and the main tanks synergy with one another that can deal with the mismatches. You know, if you have a Hog, oh boy, at least you can block with Ryan's shield while he maybe goes on a flank or does a ton of damage or hooks in their enemy tank or Orisa or something, right? But now we don't have that. We don't have that defense matrix to come and save the Winston. We don't have the bubble to save the Roadhog who's just running in. We don't have the Sigma shield that protect the Orisa once her shield's been destroyed and she's out of her fortify, you know? So, like, that synergy that kind of made up for the lacking of a single tank, we completely lose the ability to do that because now we only have a single tank. And, you know, I think most people, honestly, are going to really, really enjoy this because, you know, the vast majority of players play only DPS. And now they'll be able to queue a little bit faster, and they'll have less obstacles in their way. They'll only have, at max, one shield to shoot at, or possibly 2 bubbles for like 3 seconds, right? You know, that's not a ton. So I'm kind of worried. But we did see a couple of things that showed us that they are thinking ahead towards the right direction, giving Winston a ranged attack, getting rid of Mei's freeze, but they're going to have to do a ton more of that. And obviously, let's say like 40 things are in the works right now. 4 of those probably make it to the final build, and they're going to go through 175 other ones between now and when the game is finally getting close to be launched. So we need to see more, and the fact that we haven't seen a lot shows just how far away this game is in development. I'm not going to complain about that, although, you know, it is kind of a bummer, but obviously COVID is affecting everything. But I don't like the change. I understand the look for the change to like, and this was the only change that makes sense. If you're going to change up a composition, there's the one that does make the most sense. I completely agree with that. But if I'm forced to play Reinhardt once again every single map, and maybe it's Winston, which would be a little bit more fun than having to always play Ryan, but as someone who fills, I play, you know, 95% of the 97% of the time I'm only playing tank and healer. You're kind of forced, you're kind of pigeonholed to pick a particular character, especially historically, always with the tanks, and it doesn't help that you have more DPS characters than you do tanks and healers combined. I know we're expected to see a lot more tanks and healers added into Overwatch 2. It'll never be even close to how many DPS characters there are. But it will be a little bit better than DPS completely outnumbering both of them put together. And with there being only one tank role, it kind of gives you that caveat. It's like there shouldn't be as many tanks because there's only one role for the tank. I kind of get that, honestly. And if they deleted Roadhog, you know, that would suck, and I hope they don't, you know, just because he's already in the game. It would kind of make sense because, you know, there's only one tank per team, so why should we have as many tanks as we have healers when there's 2 healers per team? So it's definitely going to be a gargantuan undertaking for the devs to make this work. And obviously they're going through a lot of testing, a lot of iterations in-house, and by the time we get to see anything out of house, there's going to be a ton of more iterations since then, and a ton of more iterations once it gets outside of house. So those are just my initial thoughts right now on the 5v5. I don't like it, but it's possible it can work. There just needs to be a ton completely redone, especially when it comes to the tanks and some of the DPS, because now that there's only one tank to stop them, a lot of them can run wild, wiping out just the enemy team. Let's not pretend like the tanks are going to be completely focused. Healer's going to be a lot more easy to kill. If you get Genji in there, Sombra hacks your one tank, guess what? Your backline is dead, and that team fight is over faster than any team fight was in Overwatch 1. So I'm just saying, it's a cause for concern, but I trust that they can mitigate some of these concerns going forward. But we need to be preparing ourselves for a lot more change to make this even somewhat balanced. Obviously, they can't do it now. People are like, why don't they just do that in Overwatch 1 now? Because they have to change like every fucking character now, man. Because this changes the entire game.